Do you want more? More time, more balance, more love, more sex, more money, more real, and less bullshit? This is the Women Wanting More podcast with Dr. Karen Osborne. Real life, real stories, plus real tips to get you more of what you want.
Real is the new edgy. Real is the new edgy. So before we get today's podcast episode, which was inspired by me actually listening to a different podcast episode, which I'll explain just coming up shortly, I want to give a shout out to the newest members in the More Club, which I've talked about. To join the More Club, you just need to go to patreon.com/womenwantingmore. Patreon is patreon.com/womenwantingmore to join us. And the women that chose the top tier, which is called the Oprah, which is simply just $10 a month that you get all sorts of cool stuff, which actually I'm going to just take a moment as well too to speak in the More Club because it just came out on January the 1st. This podcast episode is coming out on January the 6th. I know you could be listening to this a year from now. However, I want to just share with you some of the great things and the women that have jumped on board already, but in the top tier of that, which is just $10 a month. And really, the purpose of the More Club was really to create a space for the conversation to continue after the podcast. Okay, I'm almost calling it the podcast after party so that you have the tools, the resources, the support to be able to implement what you're learning and take that even further, right? To really create that life of more for yourself, the life that you truly desire, to own your worthiness, to own your power, to own you, and really to remember who you are and create that life that you truly want. So the More Club is exactly for that. Women that chose the Oprah. I've named all the tiers after incredible women that we all love and adore and are inspired by. And most of them just go by first name, or you would know if I said the Oprah. And so these women get a shout out in the podcast to show my appreciation, love for them. So here we go. So much love and blessings to Victoria Rowe, to Shannon Natoli, to Catherine Long. Thank you all women so much. Carrie Windecker, Amy Bourne, and Jennifer Pangburn. So thank you women all so much for choosing to be in the More Club and for being all in. It's so interesting when I've created a lot of stuff over the years, for some of you, and I get it, right? There might be some financial thing that's kind of holding you back. Oh, wait, I think I missed someone. Oh my gosh, if I missed Tracy Rao the first time around, my bad. I might listen back to this and said I just said her name, but I suddenly felt like I said 6 names and not the 7 that have chosen that tier. So love to all of you sisters so much. But yeah, there's been some women that have said to me, listen, I don't have the money to come out to one of the retreats or live events or to coach with you one-on-one. Those are kind of the top tiers, if you will, of the offerings that I have within Women Wanting More, within my coaching business. And then we've got the podcast right at the other end of the spectrum, which is it's free, right? Follow me on Instagram, lots of content, blogs on there free, newsletter free. And so for some of you, I've started to create over the last couple of years online courses, and some of you have gotten the journal that it was free. You paid for a little bit of shipping, but at least I could send something to you. And so the More Club was like, wow, how can we really still support these incredible women that do want change, that do want to create that life of more for themselves, but are just not in that place to be able to choose those other experiences. So what can I create? And that's how the More Club was really birthed, was through that. So let me just take a moment and just share with you what's all included. So let's actually stop. We're going to start at so there's 3 tiers that are in there. So when you go to Patreon, patreon.com/womenwantingmore, you're going to go and you're going to see that there's 3 different tiers. Okay. And so the first one is called the Brene, after Brene Brown, of course, and which I'm sure that you all know about. If not, just Google Brene Brown. She's incredible. I've read all of her books. She's just amazing, beautiful, inspiring, fantastic. So for just $2 a month, you actually get 3 bonus members-only podcast episodes, and you get to vote on the episodes. So it's kind of like you get to create the episodes you want. So if you're like, I've always wanted to know about this, or this is where I'm having a challenge, it's like you get to create your own personal podcast within the women inside the More Club. Okay, so that's the Brene. That's what you get with the Brene, which is just $2 per month. The next tier is the Ellen. course, after Ellen DeGeneres. And you get everything I just mentioned in the Brene. So you get the 3 bonus episodes per month. You get to vote on the upcoming podcast episodes, those 3 bonus ones. So these are only for members in the More Club. Okay, so it'll come up in your feed. If you listen to the podcast on your phone, you subscribe through like iTunes or Spotify or Stitcher, then it'll come up on your phone, but nobody else sees that unless they're in the More Club. Okay, in addition, you can just go right to the More Club page and you can just play it right from there. Okay, so easy peasy. Plus you'll get email reminders when there's new content that gets dropped inside the More Club. Okay, so the Ellen, you get those 2 things, plus you get a Hot Topics reading list. Okay, these are going to be books that I get a lot of requests from you, many of you, saying, oh, what was that book? Or what books can I read? Or where can I go? So I'm going to create this Hot Topics reading list every single month. It'll be 3 books. Okay, so I'm not going to overwhelm you, but 3 books I'm going to do my best to create it on the topics that are talked about in the podcast. Okay, the regular podcast and then the bonus episodes. Okay, so it'll be kind of related. So there'll be some connection to that. Okay, so that's number 1, the Ellen. Number 2, you will also get a live video mindset training and Q&A. Okay, every single month. Plus it's going to get recorded. So it's like a live training. It's like I get to be your coach for that hour inside that mindset training. Okay, so live, including Q&A, plus it'll be recorded. And I'm also going to send you a handwritten note of love and appreciation from me. My handwriting, my printing on the envelope, probably kind of messy, just heads up, me mailing it out, okay? My love sent to you. Plus what I mentioned in the Brene. And then the top tier is the Oprah. The Ellen, by the way, is just $5 per month, and the Oprah is $10 per month. And so you get all those things you heard me mention in the Ellen and the Brene, plus you're going to get a interview with a powerful female leader every single month. There'll be video and audio. Okay, you get a fan recognition shout out in the podcast, like you just heard me mention the women earlier, and you're going to get early access and special VIP pricing for all women wanting more live events and retreats. Okay, so that's like the full meal deal with Oprah, and it's just simply $10 a month. Okay, so again, go to patreon.com/womenwantingmore, and you can join the More Club today. Okay, cool. So let's get started here then. I was inspired by listening to one of the Conan O'Brien podcast episodes. Where he's interviewing Howard Stern. So whatever you might think or don't think of Howard Stern, I've been following Howard Stern for a long, long time, probably since my 20s, late 20s, and I'm 50 now. And so, yeah, there was a time of Howard where there was the strippers and all the sex talk and the porn stars and all the craziness, right? But what's interesting is Howard has gotten older, 65 now, isn't that crazy, 65? That the conversations that he has are like of depth. And he has a newer book that's come out, and he talks about some of these interviews. And so he's still that part of Howard, but what he said was this, and this is where we're talking about Reel's the new Edgy. The time of when Howard was kind of at his heyday, considered the shock jock, okay? When he like pushed the envelope before satellite radio, okay? Before podcasts. And so, with regular radio, there's rules and regulations, kind of like cable TV. You can't swear, you can't do certain things. And he would push the envelope because that's what he wanted to do. Like he wanted to have those conversations. He wanted to say the things that people are kind of thinking but don't really have the courage to say out loud, right? Even some of the darkness pieces that we all have inside of us. And so what he said is when he then moved from regular radio to satellite, and I'm pretty certain Howard Stern was one of the first to go onto Sirius Radio, which was one of the first big satellite stations. So when he went into Sirius, and so now he said it was like the Wild West. You can say whatever the hell you want to. You can do whatever you want to. It's satellite radio. There's no rules and restrictions. There's none of that stuff, right, that he had to fight with before and was fined and all sorts of crazy stuff. People wanted to get him off the air. And so what he said is that people expected that he would kind of continue down that path, but he said, you know what was edgy? What was edgy was to not do that. What was edgy is now they have this blank slate of we can talk for as long as we want to without commercial breaks and like all that, we could have these really deep, interesting conversations where, yeah, he still goes a little raunchy. He's still Howard Stern. But yet what he shared is like the depth of conversation and connection with people and he's a different guy than what he used to be. I mentioned he's gone through lots of psychotherapy and kind of figuring out things about himself, but he just said, like, he was just so, it's almost like the word I'm going to use is not what he used, but like liberated by the conversations that were real and how fulfilling that they were and how impactful, and how him having the conversation with that guest where, and when you're in a conversation with somebody, or maybe you've had, and I'm not going to say this is no ego, but I've had this listen to podcasts where I suddenly feel sucked into the podcast, like that person is speaking just to me. Which, by the way, sidebar, that is my intention when I do this podcast. It's you and me having a conversation. And so when those of you have said to me, and I appreciate this, I don't need the accolades, but it's nice to know this is my intention. It's coming out that way. For a lot of you is like, it's just you and me having a conversation, that it feels that way for you too. And so I think when Howard had talked about this, I think it's just like, it's a real conversation, right? Now, I don't mean, remember when reality TV first came up, we're like, oh my God, it's real. And then it became, maybe it was a little bit at first, and then it's like, oh fuck, this stuff is just all staged. It's all bullshit. It's all edited, and they're just telling us, they're making it seem like it's real, and it's really not. The perfect images on social media that, let's be honest, all of us have kind of presented at one time, or maybe thinking that we need to, or we can't show our dark sides or our flaws or our faults, and this whole feeling like we have to create this false sense, which, by the way, this is how ego starts to form at around the age of 7, that we've created from our past childhood wounds, from stuff that's happened to us, our experiences, how we were raised, no blame towards parents, none of the stuff, like everybody's doing their best, right? But then we reach this point in life, which I did almost 2 years ago, of just waking up and going, oh my God, who am I? What is this? And so for those of you who've been listening to the podcast for a while and go, hey, Karen, you used to be you were really different before. And a lot of you had said to me, and again, I appreciate that, of just like, man, I kind of like this softer side of you. I kind of like watching you kind of go through this is like, wow, like this is really cool. I liked the in your face, Karen. I liked it. And that's still a piece of me. That's still that little edgy piece is still that little, like, I want to be a rebel and do things different. That's who I am. That just is. Doesn't make me anything better or bigger. It's just, I recognize that's who I am, is that little bit of mischief, that little bit like, how much can I get away with, right? How can I maybe get a little bit of a jolt to like wake somebody up, right? But it's in a different way. It's something that's much more aligned with who I truly am. And so that moment that you're going to have in life, if you haven't already, this is the midlife crisis that people talk about, by the way. It's a serious illness. Maybe you lost somebody, maybe had a relationship breakup, maybe something's come up with your kids. Like some life experience has brought you there. For me, it was a combination of like hitting menopause, of just like, oh God, I thought I knew who I was. I really don't anymore. And then becomes this journey of remembering who you are, who you truly are. That's your essence, that's your spirit inside your heart. And so Howard's sharing about real being the new edgy. I mean, isn't that the case? When so going back to Brene Brown, right? The reason I named one of the tears in the Moral Club after Brene is like, people were so awestruck from her very first TED Talk, talking about vulnerability and shame. And how refreshing it was to have those conversations. How, when we see even people, I saw something just yesterday of Tom Hanks. I think he won an award. I don't know what it's for. I'm sure it's for that new movie where he portrays Mr. Rogers. Mr. Rogers? Yeah, Mr. Rogers. I was going to say Mr. Robinson's Neighborhood. No, that's when Eddie Murphy did that spoof on him in Saturday Night Live years and years ago. But yeah, Mr. Rogers, right? He portrays him. And it looks like he's won an award for it. And so it's just a little snippet of his acceptance piece. And it's the most beautiful thing, because he starts to like, he kind of catches himself, like he starts crying, and he looks down and he talks about the love of his wife, the love of his 5 children, the love of his family. Like, I'm such a blessed man because of that. We see those moments of humanness. That's it. Humanness. And we go, wow. And it doesn't matter. This doesn't have to be Tom Hanks, right? It could be something that we see, I don't know, and just something with our kids at school with each other. It could be a friend sharing something, really sacred, really scary. It could be someone just sharing their story. It could be like the Conan podcast, by the way, and this really made me think of too, Reel's the New Edgy, is like Conan O'Brien. I don't know if you ever listened to him, followed him, watched his shows, love him, hate him, whatever. But I always thought he was like really interesting because he's just kind of out there. But the stuff he's sharing now is kind of like, I struggle with depression. And he had on Bill Hader, which is another comedian. He used to be on Center Live, and he's done all sorts of stuff since then. And he and been in lots of movies. And he shares that when he was on Saturday Night Live, that he had like crippling anxiety for the first like several years. And I think he was on SNL for maybe like 8 or 9 years. Crippling anxiety, like would get migraines that he couldn't even see because of the anxiety that he felt when it's like they got to go live and do the show. It's like when people, and again, they could be of that like celebrity status or athlete status or musician, but hearing these real conversations, isn't this really what we all, coming back to Brene Brown, she talks about how we're hardwired for connection. Doesn't that connect us back to one another to be like, wow, thank you for being real? And all the stories we have about like, ooh, I better show my best side. I better put on my Sunday best. I better like say the right things. Nobody gives a shit about that. And in fact, if anything, when we, because we've all done it, so this is no like judgment or anything like that, but when we've done that, have you not found, if you kind of reflect back that, people didn't really get me at times. They didn't, like I wasn't able to connect with them, or I felt like I was like pushing, or it was like work, like to kind of try to create the sense of who I am, and not like you're being a fake person, but maybe knowing that you got to put it on for this particular role that you're playing. Like, I'll give you an example. When I first started podcasting, so the Women Want You More podcast has been out now for 4.5 years. A year before that, I did for 13 months a podcast called Mom at 41. And it started with me reading blog posts that I wrote already for the Mom at 41 website I had for our chiropractic office. We had our chiropractic practice in St. Albert, Alberta, Canada for 14 years. And so I read those, and I think I did like a commentary on them. And then I started having guests in, and then I had some monologue ones. And I know the times when I was speaking that, and it wasn't like it was like it wasn't being who I was. It just wasn't fully integrated with who I was, if that makes sense. It's like, I'm having a visual right now, and I'm trying to figure out how I can describe this. You know how like, think of like, okay, I don't know if you have kids ever had like a puzzle game or something, right? But an iPad puzzle game where you have to take the little puzzle piece. I remember Tyson did this when he was like 1.5 or 2 on an iPad. You do like little puzzles. It was cool to watch him do this. You gotta like with your finger on an iPad, kind of drag and drop, and you gotta place it right in, right? You gotta place it right in. And if it wasn't right in the exact spot, it wouldn't really fit, right? Even if you just think of like a physical puzzle, you can maybe take a piece that looks like it's going to fit, and you can kind of fit it in there, but you're like, it's not really lined up properly. Like you could maybe get away with it. Maybe it's one of these like massive puzzles where one little piece that's out of place is not going to change the picture that it's creating from the puzzle, but it's not quite a fit. So when I think back when I used to my beginning days of podcasting, that it was the best that I could do at that time. But I remember the sensation in my body of literally trying to push my voice. My throat would be sore, like it would hurt. So funny, as soon as I mentioned that, it's like I start like producing on my body. Let me breathe that through. And I know at times now that that's like a physical tell for me. Like like in poker, if someone's like bluffing, right? They'll have like a tell, a tick, or they look a certain way or whatever. Like, that's my physical tell in my body of, oh, I'm stepping outside of me right now. And I'm trying to either be someone who I'm not, or it doesn't quite fit. Right? I'm not present. I'm not grounded like, let me just clear whatever that is right now. So being real is what we all want, right? Like with ourselves, with each other, in relationships. Like, it's almost like, the niceties of the, how are you? I'm fine. Like, we're all so tired of that, right? And again, this is not like judging anybody who maybe you don't want that. I don't know. But I truly believe that at our core, at our soul, inside of the who we really are, is that longing back to connection, really connection back to source, the oneness that we are here on this, inside this universe. That we know that when we see what's happening in Australia right now and we feel it in our body and we're just like, oh my God, koala bears are going extinct? Like what? 500 million animals have died? What? Like, I remember I was just sharing this with the boys. I suppose yesterday was happening with Australia, and I'm trying to kind of like share it in a way that doesn't scare them, because, you know, when the kids are younger and these big life issue things, it's like we need to be mindful of how we're communicating, right? And Tyson's like, well, how long have the fires been raging for? And I'm like, let me take a look, buddy. And I'm like, it didn't dawn on me. I'm like, it's been since September? You know, so when we see these things and we feel it, we just don't compartmentalize and go, oh, well, that's not my problem. That's not where I live, right? Like, we feel all these things for a reason. This connection to each other, right? We want all this. So just know this. And this is your more tip for today. And this is just maybe to keep this in mind, okay? Nothing to do. Just let this kind of cement and marinate for you right now, of just like, the next time that you feel that you have to show up a certain way for this person or in this situation, and I get it, there might be something like a work situation or maybe around certain family, like you got to turn down the dial a little bit of who you are, right? You got to like turn that volume down a little bit. That's fine. That's cool. But just know that you do not have to be anyone different than who you are. Who you are is enough. Who you are is more than enough. Who you are is perfect. That is what people want to see from you, is who you truly are. The real you. And I know it's scary when you start like uncovering those rocks, right? When you start kind of doing some of this deep work, and we won't want to more retreat experiences coming up in a couple of weeks. It's like, we'll be doing some of this uncovering work, and like, it's not easy. But it's what your heart, I know, is truly guiding you to do, because it's the experience that we all have as human beings on this planet. So the next time you try to become someone who you're not, just remember the real you is all that's needed. That's it. The real you is all that's needed. Will some people not like you in this world? Either the real you or the you that you've tried to be for them? Totally. It ain't about that. It's about knowing that our purpose here on this planet is to really remember who we truly are and to be that. Like, that's it. Everything else is just kind of gravy after that. Everything else that lines up with that. That is the puzzle piece. Clunk. Going right into place. And here's the kicker, and we'll leave this conversation a little bit of another podcast. It's a constant, it's an ongoing process for the rest of your life for that puzzle piece to fit. Because then you're going to go a little bit off again. You're going to choose the wrong piece. And go, oh, right, let me put this one back in. Clunk, there we are again, kind of thing. In other words, it's not an arrival. You don't get there. There's no here. It is an ongoing of you showing up as authentically who you are, because real is the new edgy. That's what we want. We just want you to be real, and you be you, and I'll be me, and we'll all be each other. And that's it. So that's your more tip then for finishing up. So the Women Want Tomorrow retreat experience, like I mentioned. So listen, I'm recording this on January the 6th. January the 11th is the last day to apply. There's one spot that's left. I'm actually getting on the phone with someone who's applying today. But if you still want to apply, or you have applied and you didn't follow up with the next step, or you've connected with me and I sent you an application, didn't fill it out, like, there's no judgment. You don't have to feel any guilt or shame about it. Or maybe you have applied and it wasn't a fit and you're like, maybe things have changed right now. I'd like to maybe see if I can apply again. Then here's what you need to do, okay? Or you've just heard this forever and you're like, oh my God, this is it. Like, sometimes we don't, do anything until, we've got a fire under our butt, right? So here we go. All you need to do is text me, 250-589-4811, 250-589-4811, and say, Karen, I'd like to apply for the retreat, okay? And then check your text messages, because I will respond back to you pretty quickly and we'll start the process together. So January 11th, 2020, Last day to apply for the Women Wanting More Retreat Experience. And to join the More Club, again, that's at patreon.com/Women Wanting More, patreon.com/Women Wanting More, all together. And you can join the More Club for just $2, $5, or $10 per month. All right, I will talk to you in the next episode, sister. A life of more really is one step away from you understanding that real is the new edgy. And it's what you're truly designed to be every single day. I love and appreciate you.
To get the show notes of each Women Wanting More episode, including the How to Get More tip, subscribe to the newsletter at drkarenosburn.com/newsletter.